The flip side of this coin is the finding of the chosen people, the lost tribes of Israel. Where are these people? How can we know the identity of modern people, modern races? How can we then be able to say these are the descendants of the biblical people that are written in the Bible? We know that many theories and theorists have arisen across time to explain and give this topic its due justice. And we also are aware of the fact that beginning in the 19th or 18th century, the Anglo-Israeli doctrine of the lost tribes of Israel was promoted. We have got a number of scholars and teachers and people that have walked the earth that promoted this doctrine. There's a Reverend W.H. Paul in 1879 who wrote a book, Anglo-Israel Lost Tribes of Israel. We also have got the history of the British Freemasons who promoted the idea of a Jewish state after having engaged their Turks and many other white Arabs to create a state of the Jews in Palestine. British Masons like, say, Arthur Balfour and Herbert Samuel in 1860 promoted this idea. We also have got a Colonel Garnier who wrote a book, Israel in Britain, some time back, long back. We got other scholars like Edward Wheeler Baird. They also promulgated and taught this doctrine. Today we just want to zero in a little bit on the issue of the chosen lost tribes of Israel, on a book that was written by none other than Herbert W. Armstrong. Herbert W. Armstrong was the founder of the church known as the Worldwide Church of God. He also distributed free of charge a magazine called The Plain Truth. And there were another number of publications that he also promoted. In the book that he wrote dealing with this subject, United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy, Herbert W. Armstrong goes into the biblical story, into the biblical archives, in the Bible, and finds out and teaches about the Anglo-Israel connections. He also deals with a number of topics in this book, which was given for free. The Anglo-Israel Davidic covenant, in which he promoted the idea that the British royal family are actually sitting on the throne of David, is actually sitting and ruling on the throne of David, and that the stone of destiny, in other words, the stone that Jacob used as a pillow as he ran away from Esau when he was going to Laban, is actually used as the Leaphile, the stone that is blessing that throne, the British royal crown. He also goes on to explain why the British suddenly rose to prominence and conquered the whole earth. 4/5 of the fertile earth was owned and run by the British. And so the Commonwealth countries like South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and Britain itself, and many, many others, where the Anglo-Saxon people went and conquered and ruled, it was because of the Abrahamic blessings, as taught in Leviticus 26, as well as Deuteronomy 28. Now, he also goes on to explain why the United States rose up suddenly, because he split this nation in two, Ephraim and Manasseh. And he goes on to deal with this in detail in that book. Therefore, people that have read that book and followed that book have ended up believing sincerely and honestly that the British are the people of the covenant. Now, we want to look at this from a holistic approach and look at the whole prophecies, not at singular prophecies, because if you get a singular prophecy, you can pin it and it can have evidence based on that singular prophecy. Now, if we go to the wisdom writings of the prophet Daniel, we find that in Daniel 2, there are prophecies there. There is a prophecy there of the dream of Nebuchadnezzar where he saw this image. And this image was a history revealed in advance, or prophecy if you want to say. And this image had all the kingdoms or all the powers, the Gentile powers that were to rule the earth. And these Gentile powers began with Nebuchadnezzar, who was given the symbol of gold. And his was the Babylonian kingdom. And then followed by a kingdom that is normally combined but has two powers with it. The Medes and the Persians, which is the chest of that image, and represented by silver. And also the bronze, which is represented by the Greeks. And then we have the iron, which represents the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is a successor and a derivative of the Babylonian, the Mede, the Persian, and the Greeks, because these are all Gentiles. And it resurrects itself many, many times. And during one of its eras, where clay is mixed with iron, a stone that is cut with unseen hands will come and smash this Roman civilization in which we live today. And another kingdom replaces it, which is the divine or messianic kingdom. Now, I want to add something that is very critical here. When you study Daniel, you find that you start with the Babylonian kingdom. Prior to the Babylonian kingdom, there is the ancient Black Egyptian kingdom, which Daniel does not explain or does not give, but which we know existed in history. So we have got 7 kingdoms that will dominate mankind. The first and the ancient and the most enduring was the Egyptian kingdom, which was removed from authority and power and influence by the Babylonian, which is the second kingdom. And then the Medes, which is the third kingdom. The Persians, which is the fourth kingdom. The Greeks, which is the fifth kingdom. Then we've got the Roman, which is the kingdom we have today, which will be removed by the seventh and the last kingdom or power, which will be divine power. So when we look at this and we compare it with the Anglo-Israeli doctrine, in which we want to identify and find the lost 10 tribes, you will find that we have nowhere else to fit how the British and how the Americans rose up to prominence, other than to give them the boots in which they belong, which is that they are still the resurrection of the Roman Empire. So we are still under the Roman rule today. Hence the law, the basis of the law is called the Roman Dutch law, which rules the whole world, which is the business law, the law of maritime cooperation, which is all over the whole world. Now, when we say, okay, W. Armstrong taught, but that was not correct. We have already proved that. When we look at the prophecies of the tribes that we call the lost 10 tribes, you go to Deuteronomy 28, you find that the promise of greatness or the land upon which these people should rise is defined as Canaan. And this is the kingdom that was promised to Abraham. So which kingdom or which area of the earth was Abraham promised as his by the divine? If you go to Genesis 15 and you read verse 18, you find that it says, on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham. So it's a covenant. So there is a land, a covenantal land. And where is this covenantal land where Abraham's children were, which Abraham's children were promised? You find that this covenantal land, according to verse 18, is to your descendants. I give this land. Which one? From the river of Euphrates, from the river of Egypt to the great river, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of the Canaanites, the land of Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, and the Perizzites. This is the land that he was promised. So it is from it's all Africa. So the Hebrews were promised Africa, and their greatness will start in Africa. And then if they were to be people obeying the covenant, they would then expand and rule the whole world. Now, if you go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 11 and 12, the promise the promise that if they obey it, they would receive greatness. If they don't obey, they would be backward. Is eternal. It's the operation of the prophecy. So it says in verse 11 of Deuteronomy 28, and the Lord will make you abound in prosperity, in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your cattle, and in the fruit of your ground, within the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give you. He did not promise America. He did not promise Australia. He did not promise Canada or any of these lands as lands of greatness. The only reason why these lands are great today is because they are gentilic. They are lands of Gentiles, and the Gentiles are still having their rule on earth and they're still resurrecting their Roman Empire. Not that it is a promise that was given by God to them. Now, so when you study the prophets of Deuteronomy, you find that the enslaved are not Europeans. The people that were sold in slaves are not Europeans. I want to quickly look at prophecy as a proof that the people or the lost tribes are not Europeans or any other tribe other than the black people of Africa in Africa, and they will be scattered and sold into slavery. But their main land is from the great river Nile to the Euphrates. That's their primary land. So when you go to Joel chapter 3, you find that it says, for behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people and my heritage, Israel, because they have scattered them among the nations and have divided up my land and have cast lots for my people. You have got French, Franco-Africa, German East Africa, British Africa. You have got all that divided, being divided even today, being divided by the Chinese up today. Therefore, he is saying he will say, you have sold the people of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks, the Romans who colonized and enslaved the black people. To the Greeks, removing them far from their own. And that's the prophecy there which we find. If you go to the minor prophets, so-called minor prophets, to discover what Ephraim and Manasseh, who are the leading heads of the 10 lost tribes, will do, you find that in Hosea 7 verse 8 it says, Ephraim mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim is a cake not turned. Aliens devour his strength, and he knows it not. Gray hairs are sprinkled upon him, and he knows it not. The pride of Israel witnesses against him. Ephraim is like a dove, silly and without sense, calling to Egypt, going to Assyria. As they go, I'll spread over my net. I'll bring them down like birds of the air. I'll chastise them for their wicked deeds. This is the slave that these people went through. He says, they tend to Baal. That I'm still reading was here. And they said, this shall be their derision in the land of Egypt, where we are here in Africa, because they have broken my covenant and transgressed my law. They made kings, but not through me. They set up princes, but without my knowledge. So these are the people we know today as black people who are in slavery. In verse 3 of Hosea 9, it says, they shall not remain in the land of the Lord, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt. Sorry. And they shall eat unclean foods in Assyria. These Assyrians are all the people that have taken us into slavery. In verse 5 it says, what will you do on the day of appointment of an appointed festival and on the day of the feast of the Lord? He's asking Israel. They won't do this. For behold, they are going to Assyria. Egypt shall gather them. They will be in Africa. Memphis shall bury them. In other words, these people, these lost tribes will be hidden in Memphis. What is Memphis? Where is Memphis? It's Africa. It's Egypt. That's where they'll be buried. If you go to Zephaniah 3 verse 10, it says, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, I shall call my people which is the rivers of Ethiopia. It is Africa. It is found in Africa. It is down in Africa. This is where we find the Hebrews today. So, having done that, we want to also consider, because Herbert W. Armstrong goes into prophecies and deals with prophecies. And in some of his prophecies, he says they were taken into Assyria, and then from Assyria they migrated west into Europe. And so when we ask the question, where are the 10 chosen tribes of Israel today? Are living today in the continent we call Africa. We've seen in Joel, it says Africa. They were sold into slavery, and the nations that sold them into slavery, we know them, and the Deuteronomy 28 guides us and shows us where these 10 tribes should be found. Now, to conclude, if you go to Isaiah chapter 12, verse 11, it says, in that day the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant which is left of his people from Assyria, which is the Middle East and all those countries today. Listen, look at these other verses. From Egypt, from Patros, from Ethiopia, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastland of the seas. He will raise an ensign for the nation and will assemble the outcast of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The jealous of Ephraim shall depart, and those who harass Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not be jealous of Judah, and Judah shall not harass Ephraim. So where are these people today? There, the scripture is telling you. There it's clear, it's saying they are in Egypt. They are in Patros, Egypt. They are in Ethiopia, which is Sudan, Kenya. They are in Elam, they are in Shinar. All these are Africans. The black Africans today. That's what he's saying. So, it is quite clear, therefore, that the Anglo-Israeli doctrine is a twin doctrine that also boosts the other doctrine of Jews. Therefore, the nation of Israel today and the theology that the Israelites, America, and the British Commonwealth is founded on a political reason. The reason why America grew up and suddenly became a nation, a big nation, a controlling nation, is simply because the British owns America. And the people that own the British are Europeans. They are Gentiles. They can call them British or Anglo-Saxon, but according to the Bible, they are Gentiles. Lastly, the 10 tribes of Israel that are lost today have got identifying totems. If you want to understand more about these totems, you find some of our videos and you read about it in Genesis 49. We have explained it. Please subscribe to our channel, and let us spread this message so that the original people will rise up and reclaim their lands in Egypt and their heritage. Thank you and goodbye.